I'm not the biggest Donald Trump fan in the world. I did vote for him because uh, I was even less of a Hillary Clinton fan,
Heard
and
that.
I think people understand my history of Joe Biden, so I wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden either. Um, but Donald Trump has a lot of baggage and a lot of problems. But when the system gives you two choices, I picked him both times. Um, and one of the reasons is that he said, that he thought we could be friends with Russia. And I said, well, that's good. And then he also said he doesn't know why NATO's still here. I said, well, okay, we're so far we're doing all right. And then he said,
You said, I love WikiLeaks.
yeah, I love WikiLeaks. And why don't we work to get rid of North Korea's nukes using diplomacy? Um, here's Donald Trump, who everybody, again, there's a lot there to not like about the guy, but he went out and he met 3 times with Kim Jong Un in an effort to get nuclear weapons off the table there, to de-escalate, to do
These
that.
are the
And
best things he did.
he was stopped by the establishment, betrayed by Mike Pompeo and John Bolton. And I'm here to tell all the Republicans out there, if Pompeo throws his hat in the ring, don't vote for him.
Oh,
And
God.
Nikki Haley just threw her hat in the ring, and
Oh, no.
John Bolton is supporting her. Don't support her. John Bolton is evil. Mike Pompeo is evil. These guys conspired uh, to block something that could have been wonderful, a chance to take nuclear weapons out of the equation, end a war in Korea, and actually let peace break out all over. And that could have been Donald Trump's, crowning achievement. But of course, we could have never allowed Donald Trump to have that crowning achievement. So they shut it down. They just, they attacked him, and the rest is history. But
Great point.
you know, Joe Biden, instead of trying to pick up the pieces of Trump's failed effort and run with it, has made it worse. And we're now at a situation where North Korea is no longer not only not talking about denuclearization, they've doubled down on their nuclear program. They have a viable nuclear program now that's deterrent based. But their whole thing is if we go to war, Japan will no longer exist, South Korea will no longer exist. And guess what, America? You'll no longer exist too.
They've
So
made
we
it very
get that
clear just this week in a statement that they will match us nuke for nuke. If
nuke for
they're
nuke.
like, if you want to play games, United States, we will
And
fight
what most Americans don't understand is every year the United States holds these joint exercises with the South Koreans.
you. Hmm.
And one of the things we do is we gather all our airplanes and all the South Korean airplanes and we fly straight to the demilitarized zone. Pyongyang, which is the capital of North Korea, is a very short flight from the DMZ. And we come in there, and the last second we break off. But it's a bum rush towards the North Koreans out. Why? Because we're planning a decapitation strike. We're planning to go in there and swamp Pyongyang and kill Kim Jong Un in an effort to decapitate the leadership. And that's the first thing. And so he's looking at it going, I don't like that, guys. So how do I protect against that? By guaranteeing that if I go, you all go with the
Hmm.
nuclear weapon. And what Donald Trump did, one of the first things he said is stop those exercises. This is really stupid. For all the people that pick on Donald Trump, he did have some common sense when
Hmm.
it came to this kind of stuff. The kind of common sense that comes when you're not an expert who's trapped in the history of being an expert.
He just didn't
So
have sense enough not to hire the swamp, because then he turns around and hires guys like John Bolton and Mike
that was
Pompeo.
the whole thing. Why not hire? But look, again, he's not perfect. He made a lot of mistakes, and et cetera, et cetera. But man, on certain things, he had good,
He had the right
good gut
idea.
feel. He had the right idea.
When he
Um,
followed his gut, he did the right thing. It was when people started talking to him
then
that
he
they
didn't
would
have the
change his mind.
confidence in it.
That's right.
One of the other great things he did, I forever love him for this, because Afghanistan, he came in, he said, "This is a stupid war. We've been here forever." And the military came in, Mattis, and Mad Dog Mattis. Yeah, boss, we can win this war. Really? You guys have been
Really?
trying and you haven't won it yet. All you have to do is support us. Well, what do you need me to do? I need you to lift all the rules of engagement. Right now, our hands are tied. Lift the rules of engagement. We can do anything we want in there. Okay, I can do that. I'm the commander in chief. And give us more men and more money. Okay, here's more men. Here's more money. Rules of engagement lifted. Go. And I think, 6 months later, he called them all in and said, report card. You guys are still losing.
Right.
You suck. And he literally told all the generals around there, he said, you suck at war. You guys aren't any good. You lose. And Mattis almost resigned there. He
Yeah.
said, you insulted all the generals. And Trump's like, they deserve to be insulted. You guys
After
can't
20
win.
years, you can't win this war.
You
You
can't win.
suck. Okay.
So
You suck.
that's when Trump said, we're out of here. We're pulling the plug. And, and the whole establishment freaked out. You can't leave. You can't run away. You can't do this. And again, I'm not here to say that Donald Trump was perfect, but sometimes he did things where you just went, man, that was refreshing. Have a president of the United States look the generals in the face who for 20 years say they can win a war but haven't won the war and tell them you suck at war. Boom. Because they do suck at war. They're horrible at it.
They don't want it to end. They just want the money to keep flowing.
The revolving door. You got to keep the military industrial complex alive and breathing so that when you retire from the military, you flip right in and you become a CEO at Raytheon or Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman. And then you can flip it back and become an assistant secretary of defense or a secretary of defense like Lloyd Austin. It's literally just this revolving door of military madness.
Do you think we're going to get to 2024? How close are we to a nuclear conflict right now, especially when it's very apparent that I think we're looking at an effort by the United States, NATO, to replace the regime in Russia through this war in Ukraine?
Yeah, the good news is it's failing. The Russians are pretty good. And while they may have made some mistakes early on, they may have made some miscalculations, put too much faith and effort in negotiated settlement. It's funny how everybody's like, the Russians refused to negotiate. Guy, that's all they were trying to do at the beginning. 4 rounds, the last of which would have resulted in a peace treaty had not NATO sabotaged it. The Russians are done with negotiation right now, and they've assembled a force that's going to swamp the Ukrainians. And as Stoltenberg said, it's all over. I don't know how many people watched what he said yesterday, but in short, in a war that's defined by artillery, Ukraine is running out of artillery ammunition, and NATO can't resupply them. So they will literally run out of ammunition sometime this summer. And when that happens, it's all over. There's nothing you can do at that point in time because the Russians will just blow you up and you got nothing to fire back, and das vidanya, mama. So this war will end. Russia has done a very good job of escalation management, no matter how much we provoke them. Russia's never taken the bait because they know they're going to win. So I'm not worried about the Russian thing. First of all, Russia will never use nuclear weapons preemptively. They'll never use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Even the worst scenario requires them to lose for that to happen, and they ain't losing. So, that's not the one that worries. The one that scares me to death is China and Taiwan, and the ridiculous rhetoric that the United States is putting out there about coming to the assistance of Taiwan. We're literally provoking a fight so that we can get in a fight with China. And what we don't understand, or we haven't seemed to comprehend, is that the Chinese will kick our butts. We are married to a legacy of military doctrine amphibious doctrine dating back to World War II. But the day of the big ships, the big group of the ships offloading Marines and rushing in, doesn't work, because before you even get the Marines off the boat, all the ships are sunk because the Chinese have missiles now that reach out and touch you at long distance, and we can't shoot them down. So our ships will get sunk, all our airplanes will get shot down coming in, and then we're left with what? When we have 7,000 sailors go down to Davy Jones' locker, there will be people talking about revenge, and the revenge will come in the form of a nuclear strike. Now, we'll contend that it's a limited nuclear strike. It's a demonstration of America's will. But the second you use nukes, it's over. It begins the process of an exchange, and we all die. And look, the last time this thing almost got out of control is when Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. And now Kevin McCarthy's talking about making the same trip. Again, thank goodness the Chinese are the adults in the room, and they hopefully won't buy into the bait. The only good news is the Taiwanese government that currently enjoys the support of the United States and has been talking about moving in the direction of independence will probably lose the 2024 election now. The Kuomintang party, the opposition party, did very well in the 2022 midterms. And it looks like they're going to be able to continue this on. And if they get elected, Taiwanese policy will definitely change. I don't know if they're going to just straight out agree to the Chinese position of one system, two, or one nation, two systems, which China's basically said all you have to do is say you're part of China, and everything stays the same. You wake up the next morning, your life doesn't change. You continue to have your job, you have your government, you have your laws. We're not here to change that. We just need you to recognize that you belong to us. But that's the direction they're going to head. Right now, the current government is heading in a completely different direction, trying to make Taiwan a de facto independent state from China. A Kuomintang government will go the other way, I think. And that takes all the pressure off because there's not much the United States can do at that point in time. So all we need to do is keep the United States from provoking a war between now and 2024. That might be a tall order because we have idiots like General Minahan, the commander of Air Mobility Command, I believe his name is, and he's the guy that came out and said, "I'm ordering my people to go out and shoot targets." Remember that? He said, "I believe there's going to be a war in 2025." Dude, you're the General of Air Mobility Command. You don't get to make that assessment. You're not qualified to make that assessment. That's a policy pronouncement. You should be fired on the spot, which normally would have happened, but they're not. He's also the guy that said, therefore, all my people in my command need to go out with their pistol and empty a clip at a target aiming for the head. Anybody who's qualified with a pistol in the armed forces know A, it ain't a clip, it's a magazine, and B, you shoot center mass. You don't empty a clip into the head. So this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and yet he is part of this militarization of the conflict. I mean, look at the balloon. I'm here to tell you right now, we knew exactly what that balloon was the whole time.
I was just going to ask you about these balloons.
I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah.
We knew what it was. It's a joint weather experiment that the Chinese have been running over the Tibetan plateau for many years using tethered balloons. But the data they collected there is a snapshot of that one place. But if you look at the atmosphere, it circulates around the planet. And so what the Chinese have done in cooperation with the United States is develop these experiments or these surveillance techniques to go up and gather what's happening with water particles in the upper atmosphere, because that has that plays a role in magnifying the sun and all this kind of stuff. And so the sensor goes up and it's supposed to collect. Now the sensor is on a balloon that has limited mobility. They talked about propulsion and rudders, but again, it's going to be pushed by the wind. The mobility is just to move it up a little bit, down. What happens when it breaks contact? And that's the other thing people need to understand here. Look at drones, American drones. We take off from the ground, and then we pass control off to a satellite, and then you have a guy thousands of miles away flying the drone. But if the satellite connection gets broke, the drone immediately goes into a search pattern, searching for the signal so that it can be recaptured and then brought back. This balloon apparently had the same thing. It lost contact, and if you take a look at what the balloon was doing over the United States, it was going in a rough search pattern. Now it's tough because it's getting pushed by the wind, but it's a search pattern. People are like, "Oh, look, they're spying on missile fields." No, they're not. It's a balloon on full automatic trying to make contact with the signal and not able to do so. We knew this. Why? Because it's broadcasting a signal, and we collect that signal. We know exactly what's going on. We know what this balloon was. This was a deliberate effort by the Biden administration to distract people from Seymour Hersh's outstanding revelatory article about Nord Stream and the United States attacking its ally, Germany. We don't want to talk about that. We do want to hype up the threat about China to distract the fact that Russia is getting ready to win the war in Ukraine. So we take a balloon that we know exactly what it is, and we allow it to become this story. And then we order NORAD to fine tune their radars so that they can detect all the other weather balloons that get put up in the air. And then we treat them as if they're a threat. We send airplanes up to shoot them down using 400,000 missiles, $400,000 missiles. They're finally coming out saying, yeah, none of this is a threat. We know what these balloons are. They're not a threat. I don't know why we're shooting them down. They've never impacted in air. We're shooting them down to protect civil aircraft. Really? You've never shot one down before, and they've never brought down a civil aircraft. So why are you making this up? Why did you shoot down a balloon after it left the United States? If it's truly a spy balloon, you think you would have shot it down while it was spying on our missile silos. but we drifted off. We did it to militarize this, to create a sense of, a crisis. And the Chinese are very mad at us right now. They're very mad at us for doing this. But the fact of the matter is that wasn't a spy balloon. We know what that balloon was. We knew when we shot it down what it was. This is all just a stupid game being played by the Biden administration to divert attention away from stories they don't want you to focus on, and then seek to militarize the Chinese problem. Because we don't have a diplomatic solution. That's the thing that should scare every American. We don't have a diplomatic solution. We needed to sink Tony Blinken's trip to China. So how do we do it? Shoot down a balloon, and then we blame it on the Chinese and say we're not going to visit China while their balloons are, freelancing over our airspace. This is the mindset of children, not adults.
How important is this story about the pipeline? How much impact do you think it ultimately will have, if any?
Let me answer it this way. I printed the first page of Cy Hirsch's Substack where he published it, and I'm going to frame these because this is the most important story written this century, and it may hold to be the most important story written for the whole century. This story should bring down NATO. This story should result in Germany leaving NATO. This story should destroy German-U.S. relations, and it may very well. This story hasn't ended yet. Cy Hirsch breathed life into a story that is going to resonate. It's going to have geopolitical consequence. This is literally the most important story out there because it's about American betrayal. It exposes the United States for what it is, an evil nation capable of doing evil. We on December 7th, 1941, the Japanese launched a surprise attack against the Americans in Pearl Harbor. It became a day that lived in infamy. On September 26th of last year, Joe Biden ordered the economic Pearl Harbor attack on Germany, the equivalent $12 billion piece of critical energy infrastructure. We attacked it without provocation, without justification, without any legal, there was no legal permission to do this. It was a blatant act of war that not only was a violation of our own Constitution when it comes to congressional approval for an act of war. Joe Biden conspired to avoid reporting to Congress. Again, that becomes a crime. He should be impeached. This is clearly an impeachable offense. Nobody's talking about it in the United States. This is why Hirsch's article got published, because people are ignoring this. He published it, and look at the first major interview he did. It was in Germany. And look what's happened because of that interview. German politicians are now on the floor of the Bundestag talking about this issue. It ain't going away. Russia's convening an emergency council, a meeting of the Security Council to talk about this issue. China is now going to weigh in on this issue. Why? Because an 85-year-old hero wrote an article, the most important article anybody's going to read this century. This is the article, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to resonate. That's how important this article is.
Wow. I mean, I knew it was important, but I didn't appreciate the depth, the gravity of it.
The German Parliament. There's a very brave female parliamentarian.
Wasn't she great the other day?
The Kurdish lady.
I can't think of her name.
I think her name is. But she was up there and she basically read the Schultz government the riot act about this, and it's because of Seymour Hersh's article that she did it. And there are other German politicians now who are frankly saying, because of Seymour Hersh, we now have to address this issue. And if what Seymour Hersh wrote is true, and it is, we can't be members of NATO anymore. We can't be members of NATO. We can't be allies with the United States. Think about what I just said. The most important economic power in Europe was attacked by the United States. And if they are able to shake off their current status as cuckolds, because that's what they are, it's a cuckold nation right now, letting the United States do whatever they want to do, and we just pretend that we don't know about it, and we just go on and allow the abuse to occur. It's a cuckold nation, but now, thankfully, some politicians are stepping up saying, no more. We're not doing that. We're calling it is what it is. There's going to be an investigation, and the United States stabbed Germany in the back. And when that becomes reality, and it will, it's going to resonate in Germany in a way that's going to terminate this friendship. How can you be friends with somebody who did that to you? And Germany, I believe, is going to leave NATO, and that will lead to the collapse of NATO. That will lead to the collapse of the EU. This has the potential to be one of the greatest geopolitical events in history. Talk about unintended consequences. When old Sleepy Joe got up there on February 7th of last year, and of 2021 or 2022, I'm sorry, and said, if Russian tanks move into Ukraine, Nord Stream 2 is going to go away. And the German journalist was like, but how could you do that? It's a German piece of thing. It's German. And he went, it's going to happen. Well, it did happen. And now the Germans are pretending he never said that. I mean, it's just like, no, see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil. But
Do
fortunately,
these people even realize the internet exists? It's like they think that stuff just goes away if they
goes
deny
away.
it. The internet
But
never.
Hirsch wrote an article, and the Germans have to deal with this article now. That's the importance of this article.
Yes. And it took an old school journalist like Cy, who's, like you said, 85 years old,
Yeah.
to do real journalism, because
Yep. And he
none
had
of
to
the
publish
younger
it on
crowd
Substack.
seems to have any curiosity about this.
He had to publish it on Substack
Mm-hmm.
because
The New York
thank
Times
God.
wasn't interested. Washington
New York
Post?
Times not interested.
Washington,
Washington
yeah.
Post not interested. This is Seymour Hersh, who won a Pulitzer Prize for exposing My Lai. This is
Yeah.
Seymour Hersh, who has exposed horrific abuses by the U.S. intelligence community. This is Seymour Hersh, who more recently exposed the Abu Ghraib thing. When nobody else would tell the story, Seymour Hersh told the story. Now, the New Yorker published that piece at that time, but the New Yorker has lost its, nobody will touch Cy right now because the truth is no longer what people are looking for. They're looking to spin things. And so here's the greatest investigative journalist in our history. This man is a living legend. He's a national treasure. He's an international treasure. And
He's probably the best we've still got living.
he's the only thing we still got.
Mm,
And at 85,
amazing.
he cares enough about the truth that he put himself in this situation. If you think Cy Hersh needs attention, you don't know Cy Hersh. And I'll just say this for the audience. I know Cy Hersh. We've been friends for 25 years. And yeah, I didn't know he was going to write this article. I knew that he was thinking about going to Substack, but he didn't want to. He didn't want to go to Substack, but he did it because that was the only way to get this thing published. So he did it. It got published. And oh my God, what a story. Now, people are going to try and take it apart at the seams. Right now, there's this whole, they call themselves OSINT, Open Source Intelligence Community. Let me tell you about OSINT. We can call them something else, NAFO. They're basically NAFO.
They are kind of the same
NAFO,
thing, aren't they?
They're the same thing. And they think they're so smart. They think they can say this, that, and the other thing. Hey, guys, if you lived in the real world, you'd understand that tracking the transponder on a ship doesn't tell you jack squat about the ship. If you had ever worked in the CIA's paramilitary group, Special Operations or Special Activities staff, C Branch, they actually have a thing called C Branch. And you know what they do in C Branch, you morons? They put false transmitters, beacons on things that float around to make it look like something's happening, or they shut beacons off on the things they don't want you to see. You see, the CIA is 400 million times smarter than you OSINT, snotty-nosed punk-ass kids who don't know anything because you've never done nothing except live in your mother's basement and search the internet thinking you're smarter than everybody. There's a real world out there full of people who know how to do real world things that you don't have a clue about. And so
they're the ones who like to quote Wikipedia and go, actually.
And guess who actually did do real world stuff? Cy Hersh.
Yes.
Do your research on the man before you criticize him. This is a guy who from the 1960s until today has had the best connection with the U.S. intelligence community than any other journalist out there. And it's not the connection of a Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward has an incestuous relationship.
Exactly.
Where he sits down and becomes a stenographer. You tell me, I write it down the way it is, and I publish it, so we're all happy. I make money, you look good, you get your story out, all that. Cy Hersh's thing is, I tell the truth. And he goes.
And, to be fair, I mean, Cy, because he does work with the intelligence community, he's been fed some bullshit cover stories through the years, and he's been duped, and a lot of journalists have been duped. He was duped on that JFK book he
The
did
J-
back
the-
in '97, Dark
on the
Side of
Dark Side of
Camelot.
Camelot. Yep.
Mhm.
But he
And you
admits,
know, they will feed you false stuff, but I think
yeah.
Cy generally gets it right, and he's got a good bullshit detector.
No, well,
So
that's the whole thing too. Remember, the Dark Side of Camelot was written a long time ago.
that's right.
And the thing about professionals is when you make a mistake, you learn from the mistake. And Cy hasn't made that mistake. He has learned that you have to, double all that. And he got burned on another thing too, more recently. Uh, he may be right on this story, but the way it
I think
was
he's pretty
presented,
close.
yeah, he was. I think he was right on that. And I'm not going to get in because that's his business. But
Yeah.
a source led him down the wrong path, and he said some things that may have been right, but the way the source described it wasn't quite right, and it put Cy in a very uncomfortable situation. So yeah, is he the perfect journalist? There's no such thing as a perfect
No such
journalist
thing.
because there's no such thing as the perfect person. No human being is infallible, and if you do anything in your life, you're going to make mistakes.
But at least he endeavored. He tried.
He's trying, and on a story like this, uh, if I know him, and I do, I can't say I have any insight because I don't. I can't sit here and tell you guys that I got the inside scoop, but I'm betting that let's put it this way: Cy's the kind of reporter, and I'm an intelligence guy. I'm actually the real deal when it comes to OSINT because I do open source intelligence based upon an extensive real world experience where I can cut through the BS and get down and say that smells right, that doesn't smell right. The thing about Seymour Hersh's reporting, and I used to do this for a living, take reports and then break them down and reverse engineer them to see what the sources were. And there's a lot of reporters out there who think they're being clever about hiding their sources. And it just becomes painfully obvious as you read the article and you see how they do it. And you go, that's where it came from. 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 They suck as journalists because they literally just expose their sources.
Yep.
You will never find Cy Hersh's source.
Oh, they're trying so hard to pry it out of him too.
But the way he writes, and he doesn't
they
do
can
it
prosecute them.
Yeah, he doesn't do it dishonestly, but the way he does it is, for instance, let me just speculate here. He says, I have this one source that's wonderful. That may not be the primary source. There might be 5 other sources, but he's not going to talk about them because he is just deflecting you. He's not changing the data, but you're going to be going down the wrong path. You're going to be looking for something that doesn't exist. Everything. That's how clever this guy is.
That's clever.
You will never be able to identify a Seymour Hersh source ever. And the reason is he's damn good at his job. And that's why people go to him. You have to ask yourself, this guy's 85 years old. He's been around the block.
Why do
you
you done this?
keep talking to him? Because they know he's going to tell the truth and they know he's not going to burn them. That if Cy Hersh receives them, that they're going to be protected. So for all you little OSINT snotty-nosed kids out there in your mama's basement, good hunting. You ain't going to figure out the source. And Seymour Hersh is smarter than you will ever be. And he has more integrity right there in that little pinky than you've got in your entire body.
And you know, the good thing about what he's done here, I hope he's started a fire and I hope he's, stoked the curiosity of other journalists to look into the Nord Stream case more and to do more work on it, either to prove him right or to prove him wrong. But at least he got the conversation started. No?
Yeah. Well, but that's the journalist. As I said to Rick, the conversation in Germany right now ain't about journalists. This has been politicized, and there's going to be a conversation in the Security Council soon. Russia's demanding it, and it's all because of Cy Hersh. So this isn't only about trying to get American journalists to do the right thing. Good luck. I don't see that happening. Not with the mainstream. Hopefully, there will be some not echo chamber. I don't like that term, but in the alternate media things, such as you, Lori, and Rick, and maybe me and other people, will write about this, and we'll use common sense and logic to connect the dots and come up with, something that helps resonate what Cy Hersh has started. But the mainstream media is going to ignore this until it becomes political, where they can't ignore it. And in Germany, there right now is, I believe, a drive for an official investigation. And
Certainly hope so.
watch the New York Times ignore that story when the German government officially comes out and says America attacked us, stabbed us in the back, economic Pearl Harbor. You can't ignore that story, New York Times. You can't ignore that one.
Yeah, because they've already run out of UFOs to shoot down.
Yeah,
They're
there's no
running
more
out of
UFOs.
distractions really quick. So they're going to have to face the music sooner or later. And you're right. It is an impeachable offense, clearly impeachable offense. And yet no one's going to impeach Joe Biden, I say, because he's got impeachment insurance. Nobody wants President Harris. I mean, we're talking about the worst, least popular vice president since Dick Cheney. She scares the hell out of everybody. And everyone's like, let's just hang in there for one more year until we can vote him out. But nobody wants President Harris.
Well, the thing about Biden is he's probably the most corrupt individual we've ever elected to be president of the United States.
Boy,
but
that's saying something too.
But he, this is the Delaware senator, think about it, who helped make Delaware the place to go to incorporate business.
Mm-hmm.
So every money-making establishment in America is indebted to Joe Biden. That's why he's not going to get touched, because Mr. Corruption is the man who corrupted America. When he dies, and it will be sooner than later because he's got advanced dementia, he's not going to be around a long time. He's deteriorating right before our eyes. Then people won't be intimidated by him anymore. And I think you're going to be shocked by the stories that'll come out about Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. But right now, while he's alive, there's too many people in high places that if they were to investigate him, it would spread to them.
The whole house of cards would come down.
Everything comes down. So I don't think there's going to be any meaningful investigation into Joe Biden. Not while he's alive. Not while he's president.